guess we did it the opposite, right? The subcommittee will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chair be authorized to declare a recess at any time during today's hearing without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions. Without objection, so ordered. As a reminder, please keep your microphones muted unless speaking. Should I hear any inadvertent background noise, I will request that the members please mute their microphones. And to insert a document into the record, please have your staff email it to documentsti@mail.house.gov. I will proceed with my opening statement. Good morning and welcome to today's Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation Subcommittee hearing on achieving mission balance, positioning the Coast Guard for the future. Today we will hear directly from the Coast Guard Deputy Commandant for Operations, Vice Admiral Scott Bushman, who will enlighten us on the Coast Guard's 11 missions sets and its remarkable talent for preserving under diverse conditions with limited resources to achieve mission objectives. As a regulatory agency, a law enforcement organization, a military service, a first responder, and a member of the intelligence community, the Coast Guard wears many hats. It relies on roughly 40,700 active duty service members, 6,200 reservists, 8,700 civilian employees, and 26,000 auxiliarists to perform its missions, which include port, waterway, and coastal security, drug and migrant interdiction, marine environmental protection, marine safety aids to navigation, and search and rescue, amongst others. The Coast Guard plays a critical role in preserving our national security as the sole law enforcement agency with the authority and capability to enforce national and international law in the United States territorial waters and high seas. Yet, the world's best Coast Guard is chronically underfunded and overextended. The Coast Guard is known to punch above its weight. Talk to any coastie and he or she will proudly boast, we do a lot with very little. It's a small, resourceful, and resilient service, but we can do better, and the Coast Guard deserves our support. I am keenly interested in the Coast Guard's Marine Safety Program. Today, I would like to hear the Coast Guard's plan to fully staff its Marine Inspection Program with the experienced and appropriately qualified personnel. Those inspectors must be capable of inspecting vessels to ensure they meet federal safety standards, and the service must properly allocate the resources to carry out this important mission. Having just recognized the 2-year anniversary of the conception, casualty, and tragedy last month, we are reminded that vessel safety inspections are vital to safety and cannot be brushed aside in favor of more, oftentimes exciting missions. Marine environmental protection is especially important for today's hearing as we monitor the ongoing cleanup efforts of the oil spill that occurred earlier this month in Southern California. The Coast Guard has a leading role in the Unified Command in those cleanup efforts and will pursue an investigation into the cause of the spill, which is sure to be lengthy and will require additional resources. I also look forward to learning more about the resources the Coast Guard applies to its drug and migrant interdiction operations. Last year, the Coast Guard prevented 318,340 pounds of cocaine and 70,371 pounds of marijuana from making its way onto the streets of our country. Successful interdiction in these areas require a multifaceted, multi-layered approach, capitalizing on its interagency partnerships like those with the JIATF South and leveraging over 25 bilateral agreements. The Coast Guard is uniquely postured in its law enforcement authorities to conduct a counter-narcotics mission and stem the flow of human smuggling and trafficking. However, in my conversations with members of the Coast Guard, I was disappointed to learn of the problems facing the men and women defending our nation, incurring sacrifice after sacrifice to upset the plans of drug trafficking organizations and transnational criminal organizations, and rescue victims from capsized boats. Many Coast Guard members return home at the end of the workday to military housing containing asbestos and lead-based paint. We have to wait weeks. They have to wait weeks or even months to receive specialty medical care, have a hard time finding quality, affordable child care, or face limited job opportunities for their spouses. Today, I'd be interested to learn more about the Coast Guard's plans to support its most valuable resource of all, its people, because without them, mission success is not achievable. Lastly, I'd like to turn to an important issue. Recently, news emerged of a disturbing incident that happened to a U.S. Merchant Marine Academy cadet. This cadet was sexually assaulted on board a vessel during her sea year experience in 2019. It is my understanding that the Coast Guard investigative service is conducting an investigation. Hearing of the cadet's story broke my heart and the heart of many. As the chair of this subcommittee, member of the House Armed Services, and appointed to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy Board of Visitors, I've come to learn the terrible culture within the maritime community where women are not safe in learning and work environments. I am appalled that I was not notified of this investigation or of these circumstances at the Academy. In fact, despite my appointment in April, the superintendent nor anyone at the Academy has engaged my office. This must change. I raise this issue today to highlight the Coast Guard's important role as law enforcement upon the high seas. I also expect the Coast Guard set an example for industry to work within its own ranks and within the maritime industry to ensure women feel safe and stop this culture. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get after it. I look forward to our witnesses' testimony and discovering more about how the Coast Guard balances so many competing priorities to preserve our great nation. I also don't want to suggest that the Coast Guard did not make me aware of the incident I just mentioned. The Commandant, who I was with a week ago, mentioned this to me as it was hitting the news. So I don't want to include him in the lack of information that I received from the Academy. With that, I now call on Ranking Member of the Subcommittee, Mr. Gibbs, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Carbajal, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. The Coast Guard has three strategic priorities: maritime safety, security, and stewardship. It also has duties and missions laid out in at least 2 sections of law and performance goals under a separate statute. I look forward to hearing from Vice Admiral Bushman how all these missions and duties are balanced against one another when making decisions about allocating time and resources. The committee has long been concerned that the functions related to the maritime transportation system carried out by the Coast Guard shall not be starved to feed the service's maritime security functions. The service has recently increased national defense activities. This heightens those concerns, especially at a time when current port congestion and supply chain disruptions show how important the Coast Guard's maritime transportation system role is in the U.S. economy. An example of the Coast Guard's important maritime transportation work is the Credentialing of Mariners. Subcommittee members have recently been contacted by U.S. maritime unions concerned about credentialing delays. I expect the Vice Admiral will have answers about those delays and let us know what is needed to get the program back on track. I also look forward to hearing how the Coast Guard intends to complete its very long delayed manpower planning analysis and subsequent manpower requirements. The structural portions of the Coast Guard modernization has been in place since 2010, more than a decade, but only 13% of the manpower planning analysis that were to build out the modernization workforce have been completed. Only 2% of the manpower requirements that derive from those analyses have been implemented. How much longer before the Coast Guard's workforce catches up with its structure? Finally, in 2016, GAO made 3 recommendations on tracking mission performance, which the Department of Homeland Security concurred with. To date, none have been implemented. According to the GAO, the Coast Guard needs to better, 1, document risk assessments that support its annual assessment allocation decisions. 2, develop a process to prioritize manpower requirements analysis to units that are most critical for achieving mission needs, and better incorporate field unit input. I'd like to know when these recommendations will be implemented. I thank you, Chairman Carbajal, for holding this hearing. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. I would now like to welcome the witness. We have Vice Admiral Scott Bushman, Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Assistant Commandant of the Vice Commandant of the United States, Vice Admiral Scott Bushman, Deputy Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Operations. Thank you for being here today, and I look forward to your testimony. Without objection, our witness' full statement will be included in the record. Since your written testimony has been made a part of the record, the subcommittee requests that you limit your oral testimony to 5 minutes. Admiral Bushman, you may proceed.
Good morning, Chairman Carmel, Ranking Member Gibbs, distinguished members of the subcommittee. It is my honor to be here today to represent the Coast Guard on this important topic and the various subjects you just raised. And I thank you for the outstanding support and trust Congress and this subcommittee has provided and continues to provide to our Coast Guard. Together with your support and the Coast Guard's dedicated service members, the service is positioned as a trusted maritime armed force, law enforcement agency, regulator, humanitarian service, and first responder. From internal waters to the edges of our 200-mile exclusive economic zone and beyond, the Coast Guard has provided security and safety on our nation's waters for a combination of prevention and response operations for over 230 years. Our unique authorities and the exceptional skill with which Coast Guard women and men carry out their missions provide the foundation for not only carrying out our 11 statutory missions, but to be globally impactful and relevant. As a result, the demand for our Coast Guard, both at home and abroad, has never been higher. The Coast Guard impacts the lives of nearly every American by ensuring the continued safety, security, stewardship, and prosperity of the nation's waters. And despite the impacts of COVID-19, 2021 has been no exception. We protect and support the marine transportation system to ensure $5.4 trillion in U.S. commerce and safeguard our maritime borders from terrorist threats, illegal drugs, and other contraband, irregular migration, and illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. We also continue to be the world's premier life-saving and maritime crisis response organization, tested repeatedly by yet another active hurricane season, with 20 named storms to date, as well as other natural and human-caused disasters. Today's Coast Guard operates in an increasingly complex and interdependent world. Through deliberate planning and force allocation process, we continue to evaluate the threats and opportunities to U.S. maritime interests and develop plans to achieve mission success in this dynamic environment. National, departmental, and service strategies focus our efforts and guide us in weighing operational risk and competing demands for resources, and to allocate assets optimally across our missions. We then delegate the tactical control of assets to operational commanders who leverage intelligence community and our other partners to address maritime threats and safeguard our national, strategic, environmental, and economic interests. The entire process allows risk-informed decisions that direct limited resources where they're most needed. To help guide our operational planning process, we conduct annual strategic reviews to identify operational gaps, assess performance, and outline initiatives needed to improve mission execution across our 11 statutory missions. Surge operations during national and regional emergencies, including the ongoing pandemic, hurricane response, and the recent oil spill in Southern California, all demonstrate the value of this nimble planning process. While our planning system is responsive, transparent, and repeatable, additional and more capable resources are required to meet increasing demand across the service's broad mission spectrum. Our legacy fleet of cutters and aircraft have served admirably for decades, but are becoming far more difficult and expensive to maintain. And we continue to see degradation in their operational capability. We greatly appreciate the administration and Congress' support of our recapitalization efforts. Funding provided in fiscal year 21 allowed us to sustain momentum on our most critical acquisition priorities, including the Offshore Patrol Cutter, the Polar Security Cutter, and the Waterways Commerce Cutter. However, these cutting-edge assets designed to bring our best our nation has to bear on today's maritime challenges cannot be supported on budgets that were developed for assets built in the 60s and 70s. We appreciate the congressional support that has enabled us to continue monitoring our fleet while we position the Coast Guard for the future. In closing, history has proven that a responsive, capable, and agile Coast Guard using a deliberate planning process is indispensable to the American people. We also seek to invest in improving capabilities in recruiting, developing, and retaining an exceptional workforce reflective of the nation we serve, succeed in an increasingly complex and dynamic environment. As our commandant has stated, predictable budget growth of 3 to 5% in operational funding, in conjunction with these strategic investments, is needed to fully meet the growing demand for your 21st century Coast Guard. The true value of the Coast Guard to the nation is not in its ability to perform any single mission, but in its versatile, highly adaptive, multi-mission character. The interrelated nature of the Coast Guard's mission and our culture of ingenuity provides a service with the ability to rapidly shift from one mission to another as national priorities demand. On behalf of the women and men of the Coast Guard, thank you again for your support, the opportunity to testify for you today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral Bushman. We will now move on to member questions. Each member will be recognized for 5 minutes, and I will start by recognizing myself. Vice Admiral Bushman, this past week, I got a chance to visit some Coast Guard sectors and see the service's most important resource, its people. The men and women who serve in the Coast Guard are remarkable and make do with so little. I had a chance to meet and chat with many of them. As chairman, I want them to know I am their biggest advocate. What resources does the Coast Guard need to help their service members outside the mission, such as healthcare, childcare, and housing? Admiral?
Chairman Cobalt, thank you very much for the question, and thank you for highlighting our extraordinary women and men of the Coast Guard who give so much to our great service and to our nation. Sir, I will tell you that your Commandant talks about his priorities being readiness, and that really impacts our people. It really gets at the heart of our people. While we're focused on recapitalization, I can tell you that Coast Guard leadership team, certainly our Commandant, is focused on the support to our people. There are a number of things in our budget request that directly related to support to our people, some of which you highlighted in our opening statement, getting after things like childcare, medical care, housing, and there are a number of things in our budget, and as well as our unfunded priorities list. And I'd also tell you, sir, that our Commandant talks about the need for 3 to 5% operations budget growth, and we address some of these issues that I just mentioned. Certainly a large shore facilities backlog, a backlog on our IT infrastructure to give folks the tools they need to do their jobs. And those are kind of things that are highlighted in our budget, as well as our unfunded priorities list request, and really getting after them. And then that kind of sustained 3 to 5% budget growth is really what would support this great workforce of the U.S. Coast Guard. But thank you for your support, and all the members of the committee for really being laser focused on our workforce.
Thank you. As the Coast Guard is bringing new cutters online, it's important that an updated fleet mix analysis be completed to ensure proper staffing and investments be done to outfit and maintain these assets. The last fleet mix analysis was conducted in 2011. Let me say that again, just in case we missed it. 2011. When can we expect an update, and how can the Coast Guard effectively procure and allocate assets without having done an analysis?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. No, there's a congressional report required. We had 90 days to do a report. We're late on that report. We strive to be on time with our reports. I can tell you that report is drafted. It's in final clearance here within the Coast Guard. I expect it to be within the administration in the very near future, and us to be able to deliver that report by the end of the fall here. And I will tell you that we're trying to be responsive as possible. We did get an additional request from the committee for some amplifying information to be included in the report. So it took a little bit longer than expected in order to be as responsive as possible, but expect that to be up there by the end of the fall.
Thank you. Moving on, as you may know, marine safety is a big concern of mine. From fiscal year 2013 to fiscal year 2019, the Coast Guard requested 0 additional billets for inspectors in the Marine Safety Program. This is despite internal Coast Guard reports stating that approximately 400 additional billets are needed. Why has the Coast Guard not requested any additional billets? And currently, the Marine Safety Program uses 1.5% of all Coast Guard personnel billets. How can the Coast Guard claim it is fulfilling its marine safety mission when it's so severely understaffed?
Sir, again, thank you for the question. I'll tell you, sir, we are focused in on this. And I think this is part of our readiness challenges that we're really trying to get after. And maybe to explain to our commitment to this mission, in 2018, our Commandant, shortly after we became the Commandant, published a maritime commerce strategic outlook, kind of a 10-year outlook, recognizing the critical importance of our marine transportation system to our nation, to our economy. Certainly $5 trillion plus is tied to our economy. This strategy kind of gets out looking at facilitating lawful trade and commerce, looks at modernizing our aids and navigation and marine information, looks at transforming our capacity and partnerships. And this, within the past year, as part of implementing that strategy, I, along with my mission support counterpart, published a prevention readiness initiative that really gets after the workforce that you talked about. And talks about building the capacity of our workforce, risk management, and talks about knowledge management and partnerships. We're really trying to get after that. The 21 and 22 budget requests do have some additional marine inspectors and other parts of our prevention workforce, and including cyber, this very, very critical part of our workforce. I think unfortunately, sequestration, we got put us a little bit in arrears there. We're trying to play catch up. We're trying to get after this. And I think when our Commandant talks about is, laser focus on addressing Coast Guard readiness needs, this falls right within that. This is the readiness of our, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, is absolutely critical part of our workforce that does such important work. And then a few other things with that. We're not just looking at the numbers of people, we're looking at the tools in their hand. We've revamped our training process through a rigorous multi-year analysis to really get after, lifelong learning for them as the technology in the industry is changing so quickly, and also gets after, putting tools in their hands, mobile applications while they're out in the field to do the job to make them more efficient. So a lot of different pieces to it. But I will tell you, thank you so much for your support and interest in this very, very important part of our workforce.
Thank you. We will now move on to Ranking Member Representative Gibbs.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Vice Admiral, for your testimony. Also, I want to concur that my appreciation for all the great work the Coast Guard does and their service members. And they have many missions, and some come in the national spotlight here and there, drug interdiction, hurricane relief, support, rescue, and all that. And especially after 9/11, a great deal of attention was paid to our maritime safety, maritime security, and there was significant growth in the Coast Guard's ports, waterways, and coastal security program. And this committee has tracked that and attempted to assure that increased maritime safety security didn't mean decreased maritime safety. And now that it appears the United States is taking a more active role in the Pacific, specifically the Coast Guard, due to concerns about China in international relations, there's going to be more pressure on the Coast Guard and more resources. Admiral, is the Coast Guard continuing to ensure that sufficient resources are being made available for maritime safety programs? And also, as the Coast Guard expands its operations in the Pacific in conjunction with the Department of Defense, is the service working to ensure the Department of Defense helps offset the additional costs the service is supporting of Department of Defense operations?
Ranking Member Gibbs, thank you for the question. As it relates to the marine safety workforce, we are absolutely focused on our marine safety workforce and getting the resources, not just the resources in terms of number of people, but the tools they need to do their job is a very, very important part of our workforce. There are funds requested in our provided in the 21 budget and also in our 22 budget to further enhance that. Your second question on DoD funding, I will tell you that there's a couple different aspects to this. One aspect is that defense readiness is a Coast Guard mission, one of our 11 statutory missions. So it is appropriate that a portion of this is funded within our Coast Guard and DHS top line. There's other parts of our budget that are kind of scored against Function 050, the defense funding. There's some that has historically been funded, has not been updated in a few years. And then also last year, the overseas contingency operations funding were also brought into our base budget. So if you add those two up, it's a little more than $500 million. It's scored against Function 50. And then there's some other specific things that the Coast Guard does. For example, we have 2 maritime force protection units that are on each coast to protect Navy's ballistic submarines, and that's a direct reimbursement from DoD to the Coast Guard.
Thank you. In 2016, the General Accounting Office made 3 recommendations to improve the allocation of assets and determine workforce requirements. The document, how risk assessments are made to inform annual assessment allocations, development systematic processes and prioritize manpower requirements, and better incorporate field unit input asset allocation decisions. The Department of Homeland Security has agreed to these recommendations, but they have not yet been implemented. Does the Coast Guard intend for the GAO's 2016 recommendations to improve allocation of the assets and better determine of workforce requirements? And if so, when do you think that will happen?
And thanks for the question there, Ranking Member Gibbs. I'll tell you, I think we're proud of our kind of force allocation process, but we're always looking for ways to do better. So when the GAO and external voice comes in and takes a look at it and gives us some constructive feedback, we welcome that feedback. A number of those recommendations have already been incorporated, have already been implemented. And one of the audits that talked about allocating resources, the GAO came back to us and didn't 100% agree with how we implemented this. So we're going back and taking a look at it. I think you also asked about the workforce assessments. We have a couple things in work to address those. That one of them is a manual that's drafted and in clearance and hopefully will be done in the near future, and a few more that are in progress, and I think will be completed in fiscal year 2022, sir.
Okay, thank you. I also understand there's been issues in the inland waterway cutters in recent weeks. The industry has informed us that there's 5 cutters the Coast Guard has. Only 1 is operational on the lower Mississippi. What's the Coast Guard doing to address that issue? Admiral.
Yes, sir. In my opening comments, I talked about our recapitalization efforts, our priorities being the offshore patrol cutter, the polar security cutter, and the waterways commerce cutter. And this is really an important issue. That we have 35 waterways commerce cutters, or old inland river fleet, we call them. They're somewhere between 50 and 70 years old. But I'm very pleased to report that we have a recapitalization in progress. We're very excited about this project to recapitalize this part of our fleet. Like I said, that is very, very old. We're going to have 30 these waterways commerce cutters replace 35 of the older cutters, and they're not only going to provide us more capability, but things like berthing allow us to put mixed gender crews on. So we're very excited about this, and the funds we have requested in the fiscal year 22 budget are going to allow us to complete the detailed design and award a contract for that new waterways commerce cutter. We are greatly looking forward to that. It's going to be a small business set aside, expected to be awarded in the spring of 2022, and the first cutter to be delivered in 2024.
Thank you. I yield back my time, Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Gibbs. Next, we'll move on to Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Admiral, for testifying. Can you speak to how the Polar Security Cutter program, the Polar Security Cutters themselves, will be incorporated into operations? Do you guys have a concept of operations yet?
Sure. Sir, Dan, we're very excited about our Polar Security Cutter project acquisition. It is going to replace, we have, the nation has two.
Yeah, I know that. Can you jump to my question, please?
Yeah. So the concept of operations, the Polar Security Cutter, they're going to both deploy to the Antarctic to support Operation Defreeze as well as treaty verifications. And then they will also be able to deploy to the Arctic to protect U.S. sovereignty, to work with our allies and partners. So both Arctic and ability to operate in the Antarctic and the Arctic.
Will any one cutter be able to operate independently, or will they need any support ships to go with them?
So our existing Polar Star, which is well over 40 years old, operates independently. This is our Polar Security Cutters, again, is going to be an extraordinary new capability for us, with a lot more capability than it's replacing, and they absolutely will be able to operate independently.
Thanks. So I have a question, really. It's kind of focused on the Pacific Northwest, as you might imagine, but we've been working with the Coast Guard and the Navy to improve coordination between the branches when it comes to legally protected marine mammal species like the southern resident killer whale. To date, what actions has the Coast Guard taken in terms of coordination with the Navy in the Puget Sound and Salish Sea to protect marine mammals?
Well, there's a couple things we are doing, not just with the Navy. We have a vessel traffic system, as you know, sir, up there in Puget Sound that receives whale sightings and disseminates them out to the public. We are an active participant in Operation Be Whale-Wise, which is a multi-agency effort to really get the word out to educate folks, whether it's on the water or on shore, about the restricted zones and the buffer zones. And then we also go out and actively enforce the buffer enforcement zones, and any findings we report to NOAA in the state of Washington. As far as the Navy is concerned, we are working with the Navy to establish a work group to really figure out how we can collectively develop strategies to reduce the impacts to this vulnerable species. Sir.
And what coordination are you doing with Canadians?
We actively coordinate with the Navy's, our Canadian partners, through our sector and through our VTS, the past sightings we have, as well as the receive sightings they have.
Are any of these Are any of these operations being curtailed or otherwise limited by resources? The theme of this hearing is about balancing your missions. So anything being curtailed or limited?
Not that I'm aware of, sir. I will check and verify that and certainly get back to you as quickly as possible. So.
Okay, thanks. So the Coast Guard plans, recent plans include expansion of the USCG base Seattle. Can you help us understand how those expansion plans will fit into enhancing operations in the region?
We're very excited about our plans for Seattle. We have our Polar Star and Healy State home ported out of there. Our first 3 Polar Security Cutters will be in Seattle. So we're very much focused on getting the right, I would say, footprint for our folks in Seattle in terms of It's an area where our folks like to be. It's a hub. It is a hub for the Coast Guard. Will continue to be a hub for the Coast Guard. And then making sure we have the right support for our folks there in terms of facilities, whether they're medical facilities, whether they're childcare facilities, whether the right peers for the assets we're going to put there, because it is a very important hub for the Coast Guard and will continue to be a very important hub for the Coast Guard going forward.
That's great. Thank you. And I'll out of time, but I'll follow up with you on offshore patrol cutters as well in the future. Thank you. Yield back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Next, we'll go to Representative Van Drew. Not hearing from Mr. Van Drew, we will go to Representative Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Vice Admiral Bushman, coming out today. As you know, on Saturday, October 2nd, there was a reported oil spill approximately 10 miles southwest of Newport Beach, California, that's in my district, from a pipeline which transports oil onshore from 4 offshore platforms in federal waters. The cause has not yet been identified, although the administration stated in a briefing on October 8th to 2021 that there is a high likelihood that the spill was caused by an anchor striking and dragging the pipeline. The United States Coast Guard is leading the investigation into the cause of the incident, and I really appreciate that. Cargo ships off the coast of my congressional district drop massive anchors near undersea oil lines, sewer lines, and cable lines. There's a map. So I called for a full federal investigation into the cause of the spill and demanded the Coast Guard and NOAA immediately survey the nautical chart of the coast of Orange County so they can ensure the exact pipelines placements. As more facts emerge, ships anchors, not the integrity of pipeline, appear to be the cause of the spill. The USCG has stated the spill most likely happened due to multiple anchor drags in a marked non-anchorage area, because we have over 100 right now, and tomorrow another 45 ships are coming in. So Vice Admiral Bushman, according to Lieutenant K. Neen, during heavy storm in January, an anchor dragged for an unknown distance before striking. The 16-inch steel pipe impact would have knocked an inch-thick concrete casting off the pipe and pulled it more than 100 feet, bending but not breaking the line. It has not been confirmed if the impact caused the October leak or if the line was hit by something else at the later date or failed due to a pre-existing problem. Any moment wasted in a moment too long if the existing pipeline are mapped improperly or moved. NOAA might map this out, but you use this information to approve ships that drop anchors. How do we make sure this never happens again?
Ma'am, thank you very much for the question. Certainly an important issue here. We do have an ongoing investigation of this very important matter to your district and the state of California. We have some of our most experienced folks conducting that marine casualty investigation. As you noted, they did go back through what we call AIS tracks and look at the anchorages and determine there was a storm that came through last January and a couple of ships moved off of the anchor. They moved some distance. So we're taking a look at those. I want to be a little bit careful of, if they move the anchor off station. Still don't know exactly, why that happened in January and in October, why the oil spill happened. So I want to be careful we don't get ahead of the investigation. I think we really need to, get the facts here, get the investigation. We have looked at the charts here to make sure that the pipeline there was on the charts. It is on the chart. But I think, there's a lot of different aspects of this. We're looking at not only that area, we're looking at nationwide, we're looking at the port congestion, I think you mentioned, and the various aspects of port congestion. So we make sure we really understand what's happening with port congestion offshore and have a complete picture of that and understands the risks of that, and then take appropriate steps going forward, ma'am.
It's just a second question. The follow-up question is we have about 60 locations that can put their anchor in the water. Is the Coast Guard overwhelmed and not able to safely monitor where these anchors are dropping, since that, we have actually double those ships are waiting, cargo ships are waiting out there. So how you manage that? And how are you going to tell them where to drop their anchors? Because there's so many cables and, oil pipelines and sewer pipelines. How are we going to avoid this thing's going to, happen again?
Yes, ma'am. So, what we have is, when it comes to approved anchorages, we have district commanders. In this case, out in California, it's in Alameda, California, our 11th district. The district commander has regulatory authority and ability to approve rules for approved anchorages. And then a sector commander, in this case in LA Long Beach, as they start determining where they're going to put anchorage sites, they'll work with the local harbor safety committee. They'll work with all the many different stakeholders, the industry, the state and locals, the various users of the waterway, the commercial users, the recreational users, fishing vessel, and other stakeholders to determine where those appropriate anchorage sites are. And that's how we go about doing that. I will tell you, I was asked earlier about our marine safety workforce. We're also focused in on some of our readiness challenges is our workforce that works in waterways management, and making sure we have the appropriate number of folks that are working in waterways management, that they have the right tools and the right training and the tools to do their job. Because as you pointed out, these are very, very important issues here, and we're focused on getting them right.
Thank you very much. My time is up, so I'm gonna, I have more questions, so I'm gonna ask inviting to Vice Admiral, and thank you very much for your answers.
Representative Steele, we're going to have a second round in a while, so you could ask further questions then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to Representative Auchincloss.
Thank you, thank you, Chair, and Vice Admiral for appearing before the subcommittee today. I've been working closely with the Port of New Bedford to help the South Coast region of Massachusetts become a hub of the blue economy and a leader in commercial fishing, maritime research, cargo port commerce, and offshore wind production. For example, Vineyard Wind is constructing the nation's first industrial-scale offshore wind project at the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal. This project will create at least 500 union jobs and enough green energy to power more than 400,000 Massachusetts homes and businesses, all while amplifying the critical role of the Port of New Bedford. My first question to you, Vice Admiral, has to do with the Port of New Bedford. As the highest grossing commercial fishing port in the United States and an economic value totaled at almost $10 billion, the port supports more than $230 million in shipping diverse bulk commodities and break bulk cargo. The Coast Guard is charged with securing these waters in all U.S. ports that comprise the MTS. And New Bedford has expressed their need for a vessel management system that will address the increasingly complex navigation plans with more offshore wind vessels. Do your manpower requirements analyses account for the workforce needed to develop those plans?
So this is a vessel management system, sir?
Yes, and it's to help the Port of New Bedford address navigation plans as offshore wind is incorporated off their coast. Let
me talk a little bit about our role in offshore energy. The Coast Guard, we are responsible for ensuring the safety of navigation on all waterways. So therefore, as it comes to offshore energy, we're the lead agency for, as we look, as these wind farms get put out there, how we balance the competing interests in order to, maintain safe navigation, maintain efficient navigation. And there's a number of different things we are doing. It also doesn't just impact safe navigation, impacts our operations. We need the ability to, if we have wind farms out there, to we need to be able to operate. Our helicopters, be able to conduct search and rescue, are supposed to be able to get in and out of these wind farms. So a number of different things we're doing, and we issued marine planning guidance to our Coast Guard forces that are evaluating these offshore projects. We're currently reviewing 9 different construction plans. And then we're working with BOEM, the Bureau of Oceans and Energy Management, and looking at where you have offshore wind farms, where you have the right fare. We're looking at the historical sailing routes and codifying them through a rulemaking process. So those some of the things we're doing to look at the offshore energy piece, sir.
Are you, as you're doing the requirements analyses, which I know are a major vein of effort for you right now, are you looking at what kind of manpower requirements you have for a workforce necessary for offshore wind and navigation plans regarding offshore wind in particular?
As we work through our requirements, we obviously are looking at, what are the increasing demands on what we call our waterways management workforce, a very critical part of our workforce, not only in the numbers of people we need, sir, but I also say that, the skills they need, the training they need, and some of what they're working with is not just offshore energy. We're seeing commercial space in parts of the country that has impacts in the maritime environment. And we're looking at the numbers of people we need, and we're looking at the skills they need and the training they need and the tools they need to do the work we expect them to do. And what you described is really an already complex maritime environment that's becoming increasingly more complex.
And Vice Admiral, do you consult with the cities themselves that are the hosts to these ports? I mean, for example, New Bedford has a vocational technical high school maritime technology certificate program. There's the National Offshore Wind Institute, which will be partly centered in New Bedford. These are programs that are creating a new generation of young people with the technical skills to work safely in the offshore wind environment and in the maritime environment more broadly.
Sir, we consult with a whole bunch of people. I'm not familiar with those specific organizations, but I'll tell you, I will take that question back and get back to you for the record on that specific organization. But we certainly consult with many different people in the offshore energy business.
Vice Admiral, no need to respond specifically to those 2 organizations. I would appreciate if our office could work with you if necessary, though, on vessel management and as offshore wind takes off.
Thank you, Representative Auchincloss. Vice Admiral, go ahead and answer that real quick.
Oh, sorry, Chairman, no need for him to answer.
Okay.
I'll yield my time.
Thank you. We will now move on to Representative Van Drew.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Admiral Bushman, and thank you for appearing before the House Subcommittee on the Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation to discuss the United States needs to ensure that our Coast Guard is prepared for the challenges of the 21st century. The U.S. Coast Guard is expanding operations across the country and across the world, whether executing freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea or conducting search and rescue operations off the coast. The Coast Guard has a lot to do and plans on doing even more, as you well know, in the coming decades. We can build all the cutters in the world, but we need personnel to operate these vessels. Most of the personnel come through the training center, Cape May, located in my district. 80% of the Coast Guard's total workforce is absorbed through the training center, Cape May. The facility's existing barracks were constructed in the 1960s and, as you know, are in serious need of modernization for multiple reasons. I was pleased to work with Admiral Schultz to get phase 1 of the training center Cape May recapitalization project listed as the Coast Guard's #1 shore infrastructure budget priority for this year. Congress will be appropriating $65 million to enable phase 1 of this 4th phase project. The barracks recapitalization will increase the training center's capacity by 1,000 additional service members a year. This investment ensures that the Coast Guard will have the workforce it needs to accomplish its mission at home and Admiral also abroad. The project will modernize classrooms with digital infrastructure and create far greater opportunities for women in the Coast Guard, which is one of our missions. When the training center was last upgraded, the appropriation cycle lapsed, and now the facility is short of entire barracks. We cannot allow this to happen again. It is imperative that the current project not fall short. The Congress is funding phase 1 in fiscal year 2022. And I believe that we should move to fund phase 2, 3, and 4 over the next 3 fiscal years, so the entire project cycle is provided for when phase 1 is initiated in 2024. This project is too important for us to take half measures. So I have 2 questions, and I'd ask you to speak on both. How will the Coast Guard's personnel needs evolve? How will they change over the next 50 years? And what role will the recapitalization of the training center, Cape May, play in meeting these needs? Thank you very much, Admiral.
Thank you very much, Representative Andrew. Were you looking for an answer from the Admiral?
Yes, I was. Should I repeat those questions?
Vice Admiral, yeah, I think he is froze. The Vice Admiral is froze. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. And we'll come back. We'll find out what's happened with the communication with the Vice Admiral. It looks like he's frozen.
Send out the icebreakers, Mr. Chairman.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
sound check.
Yes, got you coming through loud and clear. Admiral, can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
We'll reconvene. Vice Admiral, did you get those questions or did you freeze out before you could understand the questions being asked? We can't. Are you there, Mr.?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Were you able to get
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Van Drew's questions?
I did hear the questions. I started to answer them. So let me start all over. And certainly agree with everything you said, Congressman, about the importance of Cape May. You mentioned 80% of our Coast Guard active, our folks wearing the uniform go through Cape May. It is absolutely our enlisted center of excellence. It's absolutely critical to our Coast Guard operation, our Coast Guard success. We're excited about this first phase of $65 million for the first phase of the barracks. I think there's another $10 million in unfunded priorities list for future planning for future phases. Couldn't be more excited about it. Absolutely critical to our success in operations. I think you also asked about people and looking forward, kind of people needs. As I mentioned earlier, our comment on our Master Chief Peters of Coast Guard, they're laser focused on supporting our workforce. Our most important resource. And as you look at needs going forward there, you start thinking about what the needs are of the workforce. The things that come to mind are childcare, medical support, particularly for an organization like the Coast Guard that has a lot of small units dispersed. Certainly, we have a large shore facilities backlog, and we hear that from our folks about the status of their shore facilities, and we're starting to get at that shore facilities backlog, continue to make progress on that. And I'd also say IT, give them the tools to be able to do their job from an IT perspective. But also, it's much broader than that. It's mobile tools. So they're out doing inspection or boarding. They have tools that they can actually do the work in a mobile app like you should have in the 21st century. And those are the types of things I think supporting this great workforce of ours going forward that come to mind.
Thank you very much, Admiral. Next, we will go to the distinguished representative from Maryland, Mr. Anthony Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the Admiral for you and your leadership, your service to our country. I can't tell you how much of an honor it is for me to be able to serve both on this subcommittee on Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation, as well as on the House Armed Services Committee. It gives me an opportunity to work with my colleagues in Congress to make sure that all of our services have the resources they need so that our service members can do their job, do it well, do it successfully, and return home safely to their families. So I want to thank the chairman for holding this hearing and sort of following up a little bit on one of the questions asked by the ranking member. Last year, I did secure in the NDAA the requirement that the GAO study and report on the Coast Guard Defense Readiness Resource Allocation, and the GAO released the report last month. The report addressed, among other things, the DoD's reimbursement to the Coast Guard for specific activities related to the Defense Readiness Mission. While I support the Coast Guard's Defense Readiness Mission, I do have concerns that the Coast Guard is being asked to support the DoD in ways that are outside of the scope and or that are just simply stretching the already thin resources available to the Coast Guard. Admiral, the GAO found that between fiscal years 2011 and 2020, the DoD reimbursed the Coast Guard a little under $850 million. The report also showed that during that same period, the Coast Guard appropriations for defense-related activities declined by 9%. The report also indicated that the Coast Guard's position on the reimbursement policy is that it's not intended to replace or cover the cost of the Coast Guard's commitments to DoD. So in your view, how does the reimbursement policy enable the Coast Guard to carry out its defense-related, or I should say defense readiness mission? And can you explain where the line is drawn between what is considered a reimbursable action and what is the Coast Guard fulfilling its statutory defense readiness mission?
Sir, so as I mentioned earlier, defense readiness is one of our 11 missions. So there is an appropriate level of defense that should get funded within our Coast Guard, within our DHS budget. There's a number of different things where we do get money either from DOD or scored against DOD or scored against Function 50 money. That's both the Function 50 money that's in there, as the overseas contingency operations that fund a whole bunch of things, including like we deploy a port security unit to support Department of Defense.
Admiral, if you could where do you draw, what is the difference between a reimbursable action and the Coast Guard fulfilling a statutory defense readiness mission? Just, if you can give me an example or two.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of a direct or reimbursement, I would say, payment from Department of Defense. We have two maritime force protection units, one in Bangor, Washington, one in Kings Bay, Georgia. Their sole mission is to protect Navy's nuclear submarines when they transit in and out. That is what they're there for. It's because of our authorities. DOD asked us to be there, and that's an example where that mission is 100% funded by DOD. So we pay zero. They pay for the cost of the
That's a good example. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Let me ask you this. The Coast Guard commitment to DOD's Indo-Pacific Command increased in fiscal year 2019 and 2020, and I'm going to assume that it will continue on the rise as we focus more on the Indo-Pacific. With a declining defense readiness appropriation and an increasing activities in Indo-PACOM, which I recognize isn't even the largest dedication of Coast Guard resources. I think more of it goes to Southcom. But are you concerned that your defense readiness budget is not going to keep pace with the increase in demand by the DOD on the Coast Guard, particularly in Indo-Pacific?
Congressman, I think what our current commandant talks about is having a ready Coast Guard to do what the nation needs it to do. And that includes, restoring our readiness and then having 3 to 5% annual budget growth in our operations budget. Budget that's currently before Congress is the first time we've seen some operations budget growth. That's about 6%. That's the type of activity that gets you a ready Coast Guard to really do what the nation needs to do. And that's what I really think we're focused in on, is kind of restoring our readiness and having a sustained path of the correct budget growth. As it relates to Indo-PACOM, I talked about the demand for Coast Guard services never been greater. And certainly Indo-PACOM is an example of that. That's an example of an area where we're seeing an increasing demand signal for Coast Guard services. We've recently invested over there. We put 3 of our new fast response cutters over in Guam. We're already doing extraordinary work in the Pacific there. There are major cutters that we've deployed. Most recently, one of our national security cutters deployed and work with the Indonesian Maritime Security Agency, work with Japan, Taiwan, and Indonesia, and also in support of the combatant commander. And also some of our training teams to help kind of build capacity. And there's really a number of reasons for this. And it has to do with, the Coast Guard's role. And our commandant signed out last year, along with the Chief of Naval Operations and the Commandant of Marine Corps, a tri-service maritime strategy. And, talk about how these 3 services work together and the value they provide the nation. And that strategy talks about the Coast Guard's mission profile and how that makes us really a preferred partner of choice for so many different nations, subject to coercion, some type of coercion here. So I think there's certainly an increasing demand signal on Indo-PACOM and other places, and we're really focused on having a ready, restoring readiness and maintaining that readiness so the Coast Guard is able to do what the nation asked us to do.
Thank you, Admiral. And Mr. Chairman, in yielding back, I'll just say that, while we are looking at a fairly substantial increase in DoD spending for components other than the Coast Guard. I would hope that we can find ways to boost the spending for the Coast Guard. You've got a maintenance backlog, increase in demand signals. You're doing fantastic work, you and your team at the Coast Guard. We got to make sure you got the resources you need to perform that mission and to come home safely to your families and the country that you love. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We will now move on to Mr. Lowenthal. I know he was on earlier. I don't know if he's still on. Maybe he had to leave. All right, with that, we will proceed to do another round of additional questions. I will now recognize each member who wishes to speak for 5 minutes, and I will start with myself. Admiral, the Coast Guard's fiscal year 22 budget requested about 1,200 new operations and sustainment positions. What analysis has the Coast Guard conducted to support its request for these additional personnel?
Chairman, thank you for the question. I think, we're in, thanks to the support of the administration and Congress, we're in the midst of our, largest recapitalization of our fleet since World War II. So many of those positions, as we're bringing these new assets online, they're really to operate those new assets, those great ships we're going to be getting here through this great recapitalization effort. I'd say there's some other things in there as well. So we talked about some of the marine safety concerns with the committee here and how we're trying to address those and requesting some more marine inspectors, some more folks that work in the marine safety field. And we're also increasing our cyber capability as we see continued cyber. So it's a number of different things that constitute those 1,200 people, sir.
Thank you. Moving on, effective risk management and asset allocation requires access to informative data. However, the GAO has identified serious limitations to the MISLE, aka missile system, a key data system for multiple Coast Guard missions. What is the status of the Coast Guard's effort to replace those systems, and why have you not acted sooner?
Mr. Chairman, MISLE, we call it missile. It's it's a repository of information we do for many of our cases, whether in inspections, law enforcement, search and rescue. We're looking at what the missile needs to be of the future. It's a system that we really are starting to get after, looking at what the missile looks like in the future. We're also looking at taking pieces of missile and breaking it down in applications so they can use it in a mobile fashion. So the folks in the field, they're out there boarding a vessel, maybe it's a commercial vessel, and right now they have to drive back to their office and maybe several hours to enter data in a computer. We're trying to give mobile apps to folks so they can be much more efficient. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. I think you asked why we're not getting at this earlier. This really is one of those we talked about the importance to restore Coast Guard readiness and sustain budget growth. This is one of those things that, really falls in that category, to having the resources to be able to fund these really, really important things for us to do our jobs as job enablers. So thanks for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Admiral, earlier you mentioned sequestration. Could you provide more details on how this is impacting the service? And could you detail if this impacts strategic planning long-term? And you touched on the shortcomings of that effort regarding the missile program, but what else could you touch on?
I think it really gets down, sir, to our readiness concerns. Sequestration had an impact of things we weren't able to fund, things we had to scale back a little bit. Whether it's maintenance, whether it's training shortfalls and those types of things. So, and that's what we're really trying to get after now. And we really can't thank the committee enough, your support, Mr. Chairman, for really addressing Coast Guard readiness concerns and various things we talked about. And that's how we're really trying to get after them.
Thank you, Admiral. Next, I will proceed with to Ranking Member Gibbs.
Thank you, Chairman Carvajal. Admiral, in your testimony, you discussed the polar operations at length and the Coast Guard's vessels to conduct missions in the Arctic and in Antarctica. And you mentioned about the services to uphold the sovereign rights, advance our security interests, promote environmental stewardship, and support economic prosperity in the Arctic. And we have our two major vessels, the Healy and the Polar Star. Do they provide, would you say they provide the most visible representation of U.S. sovereignty in the Arctic Ocean and waters surrounding the Antarctica? That's just, I guess, simple yes.
Right. Ranking Member Gibbs, that's an absolute yes.
Okay. Also, in your testimony, you state that the service remains committed to providing year-round surface coverage in the Bering Sea. It was reported, the Seattle Times reported that there was a 12-week deployment this year of the Polar Star, was the first winter deployment of any U.S. Coast Guard vessel since 1982. That's like 40 years ago. If not, was that year-round surface coverage was that an incorrect? And if that is the case, was that correct reporting? When is the next winter deployment of the Bering Sea by a U.S. Coast Guard surface vessel? Winter deployment.
Ranking Member Gibbs, so as it relates to Alaska, it's certainly a unique operating environment, huge territory, tyranny of weather as well. We have a major cutter in the Bering Sea at all times, a minimum of 1.0 presence in the Bering Sea. That's a commitment we have made there. In addition to that, our Coast Guard cutter Healy, you just talked about, operates up there part of the year, sometimes doing science and support of science missions. This year, the Polar Security Cutter normally would deploy down to Antarctica to support the breakout of the McMurdo Research Station there and do some other things. It was unable to do so due to COVID, due to concerns of unique environment down there introducing COVID. So we had the great opportunity to deploy it for the first time in many years up to the north, furthest north I think it had ever been in many, many years, went up to 72 degrees north in the wintertime. So, but we always have at least a major cutter presence in the Bering Sea as well.
Okay, so Seattle Times was incorrect in their reporting then?
Sir, I'm not familiar with that reporting, but I can certainly look into that article and get back to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Also, we talk about domestic ice spraying policy, prioritizing maritime deliveries of food and fuel over industrial supplies as a number one prioritization of Tier 1 waterway commerce might be appropriate in the northeastern states of the Great Lakes. The vast majority of food and fuel is delivered by land transportation, not vessels. Instead, the Great Lakes steel manufacturing industry depends on adequate winter icebreaking to facilitate delivery and raw materials, and this icebreaking is needed in more areas than just the 4 Great Lakes connecting channels that the Coast Guard considers Tier 1. In light of the creation of the office that took the construction of the new Great Lakes icebreaker, we will revisit the Coast Guard's domestic icebreaking policy with respect to the Great Lakes so that it more appropriately considers the maritime commerce needs of this important area.
Ranking Member Gibbs, so let me just talk about domestic icebreaking mission. We have a number of domestic icebreakers, most of the 140 foot. They're on the Great Lakes. A few of them are in the Northeast. Then we have some smaller 65-foot cutters. We're very much focused on that mission and keeping the shipping lanes open in the winter. One of the good news is our 140-foot icebreakers just went through a service-like extension program. So they, going to be more cruising reliable. It won't be out of service going through an extended dry dock. So there's more of them there. We shifted one into the Great Lakes to keep an additional one in the Great Lakes to keep commerce moving. So we're very much focused in on that, as well as our existing cutter Mackinac. And then I think you asked about some of the measures of that. We certainly have measures. Our performance measure there is keeping 95% of the major waterways up there open year round. And I hope that answers your question, Ranking Member Gibbs.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, because I think, that I just want to make sure the Coast Guard realizes how they prioritize stuff, but for the economic commerce, it's very important, more than just fuel and food. So thank you very much. I yield back.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Representative Steele, I know you're online. I don't know if you have additional questions. Not hearing any. I will move forward to close our hearing. This concludes our hearing for today. I would like to thank the witness for your testimony. I ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open until such time as our witness has provided answers to any questions that may be submitted to them in writing. I also ask unanimous consent that the record remain open for 15 days for additional comments and information submitted by members or the witness to be included in the record of today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered, the subcommittee stands adjourned.